Here we are continuing our lecture on demand. We can group the kinds of things that cause shifts in the demand curve into 5 categories. The first one is the income of consumers. The second one is prices of related goods. The third factor is expectations. The fourth factor is tastes and preferences. And the fifth factor is the size of the market. We'll look at these one by one. A shift in income, a change in consumers' income, can have 2 different effects depending on the type of good. In most cases, when we are wealthier, when we have a higher income, we purchase more of most things. We demand more of most goods. These goods we'll define as normal. Most of the things that you consume are normal. Shirts and cars and TV sets and movie tickets and things like that are normal goods. There are other goods, though, that when our income rises, we actually consume less of them. These are goods that we call inferior goods. Mac and cheese is an example, or ramen noodles. When we have very little money, we spend a lot of it on mac and cheese to survive because it's inexpensive and provides a low-cost meal. As our incomes rise, we spend less of our money on mac and cheese and ramen noodles and move up to fancier things like hamburgers or steak. An inferior good is one that when our income rises, we consume less of the good. So we can look at both of these goods in the graphs that we've drawn on the slide here. A normal good is depicted in the top frame. When your income rises, if the good is normal, the demand will increase at every price. The demand curve will shift outward, will shift to the right. If your income rises and your demand for the good falls, that is, you start to buy less at every price, this is reflected in the bottom frame by a leftward shift, a downward shift of the demand curve, or a fall in demand. In the top frame, an increase in your income leads to an increase in demand for normal goods. In the bottom frame, an increase in your income leads to a fall in demand for inferior goods. Sometimes a change in the price of a related good can affect the good can affect your demand for a particular good. So suppose that this is the demand for hot dogs. In this case, if the price of hamburgers rises, hamburgers are a substitute for hot dogs. We can choose between hamburgers or hot dogs. If the price of hamburgers rises, more people will switch to hot dogs, and this will lead to an increase in the demand for hot dogs, reflected by a rightward shift of the demand curve. So when the price of hamburgers goes up, the demand for hot dogs rises as people switch away or substitute toward hot dogs. Hot dogs and hamburgers, therefore, are substitutes. In the bottom picture, consider mustard. If the price of mustard rises, and people like to put mustard on hot dogs, then people will substitute away from hot dogs. They won't be willing to bear the increased cost of mustard in addition to the cost of the hot dog. Hot dogs and mustard are complements. The same would be true for hot dog buns. If hot dog buns become more expensive, people will shift away from hot dogs and towards other things like perhaps hamburgers or something that doesn't require mustard or doesn't require hot dog buns. These goods are called complements. Hot dogs and mustard, hot dogs and hot dog buns are complements. A change in expectations can bring about a change in the consumer's demand curve. If we expect the price of a good to rise in the future, we may choose to consume more of it now, and this will shift our demand curve out immediately. This is the case of, for instance, a stock, where we buy and sell stocks in the stock market. If we think that the stock price is going to be high in the future, we buy it today, and this has the effect of pushing the demand for that stock up today. The demand curve will rise immediately due to our expectations of a price increase sometime in the future. So, for instance, if we wish to buy oranges, and we learn that the weather has turned bad and the orange crop that isn't due to be harvested until later in the season is going to be poor, and we expect that orange prices will be high later, then we will start buying oranges now, and the demand curve for oranges will shift up immediately rather than waiting all the way until the effects of the bad weather are felt. Another thing that can affect the position of the demand curve is market size. And if the market increases in the number of buyers, we can see the demand curve shift outward immediately. We can see a shift to the right of the demand as the population increases, for instance. So as you see people move away from downtown into farther and farther away suburbs as cities tend to sprawl, as the people move out, you also see increases in the numbers of shopping centers or restaurants or other sorts of activities out in the suburbs as well. So when the population rises, the demand for those goods and services rises along with it. Then lastly, changes in tastes and preferences can affect the demand curve. If we change our attitudes about certain goods, this can lead to changes in demand. In practice, this is very difficult to observe, and it's the tendency for economists to try to look for things in the other categories before we fall back on tastes and preferences as an explanation for changing demand.